The world believes financial crashes are unpredictable storms created by fate, panic, or random stupidity. That belief is the first lie. Every major financial disaster that reshaped the world, from the Great Depression to the 2008 crash, followed a pattern so precise that it looks engineered. The same emotional seduction, the same blindness of the crowd, the same traps disguised as opportunities, and the same result: ordinary people lose everything, while the powerful walk away with even more. The only difference between 1930 and 2008 was scale. In 1930, the elites learned how to harvest wealth through collapse. In 2008, they learned how to make the victims pay to rebuild the power structure after the collapse. The story always starts the same way: a new dream, a new belief, a new illusion that this time, this economic growth is different, this one is permanent, this one is inevitable. In the 1920s, the dream was stocks. In the early 2000s, the dream was houses. It never matters what the object is. What matters is that belief spreads like a virus. Once the public believes in the dream, the public becomes compliant. They borrow money, they invest, they expose themselves, they volunteer to be vulnerable, because they think they are participating in the biggest chance of their lifetime. This is why the system always begins a collapse with euphoria, because euphoria makes ordinary people deaf to warning signs. Financial history is the story of the masses believing the illusion of permanent prosperity. The Great Depression showed the first industrial scale version of this. The 1920s felt unstoppable. New technologies, new factories, new mass production. People believed human progress had eliminated risk itself. No one imagined the crash that was coming. In that illusion, they placed their life savings into stocks. And because leverage existed, they didn't just put their money in, they borrowed more. They invested money they didn't have, they chained their future to the market, and when the crash hit, the chain tightened around their throat. This was the first great transfer. Panic selling didn't destroy wealth. Panic selling transferred wealth. The public sold in despair. The elites bought in silence. It was not a tragedy. It was a reallocation. After this, institutions were built. The SEC, the FDIC, regulation, control. But this control wasn't to prevent future collapses. It was to structurally organize future collapses under supervision. The 1930s showed that collapse is power, and power must not be random. It must be managed. Decades passed. Technology changed. The world globalized, the dollar became the empire currency. But underneath it all, the blueprint stayed intact. Build euphoria. Get the public inside the bubble. Burst it. Extract. Every boom was a loading mechanism. Every bust was a collection moment. So when 2008 arrived, the cycle didn't break. The cycle matured. The dream in 2008 wasn't the stock market this time. The dream was everyone deserves a home. This dream was sold as morality, as fairness, as equality. But inside that slogan was the same psychological trap as the 1920s. They convinced ordinary people to take on massive leverage into an asset that they believed could never fall. The public walked blindly into the trap again. But this time, the system had evolved. Wall Street didn't just sell the loans. They packaged them, sliced them, rated them at A, and exported them worldwide. The collapse would not just extract American wealth, it would extract global wealth. This is where the blueprint evolved. In 1930, the elite bought cheap assets with their own cash. In 2008, they did something much more powerful. They used the public's own tax money to bail themselves out. This is the actual horror of 2008. Not the crash, the recovery. The recovery revealed a new level of system power. Moral hazard became official policy. Banks became too big to fail. Risk became fake. Losses became temporary. Capitalism died quietly and was replaced by central bank-managed capitalism. The system realized it never had to fear collapse again, because collapse gave it more authority. That is the real connection between 1930 and 2008. 1930 taught the system how to harvest wealth from collapse. 2008 taught the system how to get paid to collapse the world. 2008 did not end anything. It began a new era. Because once the financial elite realized that governments and central banks would always rescue them, they unlocked infinite leverage. Why fear risk if loss gets refunded? Why worry about consequences if collapse brings more power? Why fear crisis when crisis forces the world to kneel and accept whatever structure is offered as the solution? The Great Depression showed collapse can be used to take assets. 2008 showed collapse can be used to take control of the entire world economy. This is why every market from 2009 to 2020 behaved like a casino that never sleeps. Asset prices didn't grow because of innovation. They grew because the world lived on artificial money. Corporations borrowed cheap money to buy back their own shares. Hedge funds borrowed cheap money to amplify trades. Governments borrowed cheap money to plug political failures. Central banks printed value, the same way magicians pull rabbits out of hats. What was called recovery was actually a permanent state of inflation hidden under the surface. This is why everything became more expensive with no logical reason. Houses doubled. Stocks tripled. Tech valuations went insane. Crypto exploded from nothing. People thought they were witnessing progress. They were witnessing the side effect of a post-2008 system where money had no anchor, no discipline, no gravity. Because after 2008, the system realized it didn't need gold, discipline, real value, or real productivity. It only needed belief. If the world believed central banks could protect markets forever, then the illusion could continue forever. Everything today, the housing crisis, the cost of living crisis, the inflation crisis, all of it is noise coming from the same root source. The world never recovered from 2008. The world mutated after 2008. The financial structure today is not built on prosperity. It is built on the residue of the crash. The scars are the foundation. This is why part 1 ends with this one shocking conclusion. The modern economy is not a system of growth. It is a system of engineered collapse. And every time collapse happens, the system extracts more control, more obedience, more data, more authority. The Great Depression was the first test. 2008 was the proof of concept. And somewhere quietly, silently, dangerously, the next collapse is already loading. The biggest financial danger today is that the next financial disaster is not a future event. It is the active process the world is already living inside. People only call something a crash when everything breaks in one night. But the truth is, everything today is already breaking slowly, constantly, silently. The real collapse after 2008 did not happen in one single day like 1929. It became a continuous leak that kept bleeding the world every single year. Every year after 2008, the central banks had to go deeper into artificial money, governments had to borrow more, corporations had to rely more on cheap debt, and ordinary people had to work harder for less. This is not stability. This is the slow, permanent fall, disguised as normal life. People think 2008 was about bad loans. No, 2008 was the moment the world economy entered a permanent artificial life support machine. All real price discovery died. Real capitalism died. Value no longer came from productivity, invention, or skill. Value came from injections of printed money. The market stopped reacting to real information. The markets became addicted to central bank signals. A simple sentence from the Federal Reserve could make stocks explode upward or crash downward. This is not a free market. This is psychological manipulation. The most important point is the system cannot return to normal without collapsing. If interest rates remain high, governments go bankrupt because their debt is too large to service. If interest rates are cut back to zero, inflation explodes again. Both directions are deadly. The system is trapped. It has no safe exit. After 2008, the future collapse became baked into the structure. The reason the next collapse will hit harder than the Great Depression or 2008 is because everything now is interconnected in a way the past never experienced. Global supply chains, global banking, global capital flow. The entire world is one body now. If one organ fails, the whole body dies. The world is so leveraged, so stretched, and so dependent on artificial support that a single shock can ignite a chain reaction. People don't see it because the system hides the stress by constantly injecting new money, the same way a drug addict hides their pain with another dose. And the most terrifying layer, the powerful already know this. They are not trying to stop the next collapse. They are preparing to use it. They know that collapse justifies new rules. The Great Depression justified the birth of huge financial institutions. 2008 justified unlimited central bank power. The next collapse will justify the total replacement of money itself. Physical cash will disappear. Everything will go digital. Every transaction will be programmable and traceable. And once money becomes code, control becomes absolute. Every major country on earth is already testing central bank digital currency quietly. They are not doing this because it is convenient. They are doing this because the current system is mathematically impossible to save forever. They need a new financial architecture ready before the old one snaps. In the past, collapses were terrible events that forced governments to scramble for solutions. This time, the solution already exists in their hands. They are simply waiting for the right moment to introduce it, because they know the population will never accept total control of money voluntarily. People only accept extreme control when they are desperate. So the next collapse is the key they will use to unlock total digital control. Everything that is happening right now is preparation. Nations pushing cashless society narratives, payment apps replacing physical money, digital ID systems being normalized, banks closing physical branches, governments talking about financial security upgrades. They are slowly killing the physical interface of money, so when the shock hits, there will be only one path forward. They learned from 1930 that collapse consolidates assets. They learned from 2008 that collapse consolidates power. Now they want to use collapse to consolidate pure control. Most people don't see it because they have been trained to think all change is innovation. But if change was truly innovation, life would be getting easier. Instead, life is getting more expensive, more stressful, more unstable. Depression, anxiety, burnout, financial strain, cost of living crisis. These are not random social issues. These are symptoms of a financial system that is draining the population constantly. The world is being squeezed slowly before the snap. Every collapse in the past came with suffering. But this time, the suffering is already happening before the collapse officially begins. This is the silent suffering phase, the priming phase. And when the actual trigger event hits, people will be so exhausted, so hopeless, so lost in survival that they won't resist anything. This is the real legacy of the Great Depression in 2008. The world didn't learn to prevent disaster. The world learned to rely on disaster. The financial elite learned that crisis is the moment of maximum opportunity. And the more pain the population feels, the more control can be taken. After 2008, suffering became a resource. Despair became a tool. Life pressure became leverage. The global system discovered that a constantly struggling population is easier to guide than a confident one. Fear is the steering wheel. The most brutal truth in this entire story is simple. The modern financial system does not want stability. Stability stops transfers of power. Stability keeps wealth in pockets of millions. Stability keeps people independent. Crisis, collapse, chaos, these are the environments where the system grows stronger. And now the world is entering a new stage of financial evolution that will make the Great Depression and the 2008 crash look like minor rehearsals. The next collapse will not just reorganize wealth, it will reorganize human behavior. Payment, savings, work, identity, all of it will become part of the same managed infrastructure. After the next collapse, life will not look like a broken version of today. It will look like a redesigned world with new rules. The shift won't only be economic, it will be psychological. People will stop thinking in terms of my money and start thinking in terms of my allowance inside the system. Because money will no longer be something people hold. Money will become something they are granted. Programmable currency will let the system decide what money can buy, where it can be spent, how much can be saved, and even when it expires. It will be a reward and punishment tool. Compliance will become economically incentivized. Dissent will become economically punished. And all of humanity will experience financial reality the way people experience social media platforms, under constant terms and conditions that can change any moment. Jobs will change, because jobs will no longer be paid by free capital. They will be paid by centrally managed digital credit. Companies will change because companies will be forced to exist inside the rules of programmable finance. Wealth will change because wealth will no longer be independent. Wealth will be monitored, guided, supervised. The concept of someone being off the grid financially will not exist. The system, after the next collapse, will have total visibility. The line between financial identity and personal identity will be erased. People will call this efficiency. They will call it convenience. They will call it modernization. Just like in the past, they called the bubble illusions prosperity. The words will be friendly, the marketing will be happy, the announcements will use attractive language. But behind that language will be the same engine that was created in 1930 and perfected in 2008. The engine that uses collapse to upgrade itself. This is why history keeps repeating. Not because humanity is stupid, but because the blueprint rewards the designers of collapse more than the builders of stability. It is more profitable to break the world than to grow it slowly. It is faster to redirect wealth through panic than through production. The elite learned that long ago. They learned it the hard way in the Great Depression. They proved it flawlessly in 2008. And now they are preparing to execute it one more time, on a level the world has never seen. The future is not a battle between rich and poor. It is not a battle between capitalism and socialism. It is not a battle between left and right. The future is a battle over control of money itself. And whoever controls the money, controls the people, controls the governments, controls the laws, controls the reality. Everything else is decoration. The Great Depression started the story. 2008 continued it. The next collapse will finalize it. That will be the moment when the financial world fully completes its evolution, from a market driven by value into a machine driven by control. The script is already written. The last act has not been played yet. There's a final twist in this story that most people never realize until it is too late. When money becomes a control system, freedom becomes an illusion. Freedom used to mean the ability to walk away, start over, build again. The Great Depression destroyed millions, but people still had land, still had physical cash, still had gold, still had some form of independence. 2008 destroyed millions, but people still had the ability to hold Bitcoin, start online businesses, move money between countries, take risks. After the next collapse, independence will not survive, because independence is impossible when money itself is locked inside a digital cage. This is why the next era will not be defined by wealth. It will be defined by obedience. People will not fear poverty. They will fear being disconnected from the system. Because being disconnected from the system will mean no food, no travel, no communication, no transaction, no existence. In previous financial disasters, the rich got richer and the poor suffered. In the next disaster, the control system will not just manage wealth, it will manage existence. Those who control the money will control the meaning of life. The most powerful banks, corporations, and governments have already merged silently. Big tech, big finance, big state, they are now one structure. The data from phones, transactions, social media, biometrics, behavior, all of it will feed into the future financial operating system. The next collapse will be the moment where they will justify merging identity with money to stop fraud, to keep the system safe, to protect the public. It will sound like care, but it will be the final lock on the cage. And the cruel irony is, it will happen peacefully. Not through war, not through riots. It will happen through exhaustion. People will be so tired, so financially broken, so mentally drained, that they will accept any offer that promises stability. The final collapse will not be loud. It will be quiet. Quiet like the slow sinking of a ship that no one notices until their feet are underwater. The world is approaching a point where money will no longer reflect value. It will reflect permission. And that permission will define who is allowed to live normally and who is not. The owners of the next system will not be kings or presidents. They will be the coders of the monetary algorithm. The people who can change the rules of money with a line of code will have more power than any empire in history. They will not need armies. They will not need police. They will not need laws, because they will govern through the very thing humanity depends on to survive: purchasing power. This is the end of the story, the permanent transition. The Great Depression showed collapse could destroy the middle class and strengthen the system. The 2008 crash showed collapse could destroy reality and the system could still survive. The next collapse will show collapse can destroy freedom and the system will finally transform into its perfect form. This is not pessimism. This is the logical end of the pattern. The world is not on the edge of a new era. The world is already inside it. The script is written. The actors are on the stage. The audience just hasn't realized which scene they're in. When the next shock comes, whether from markets, geopolitics, energy crisis, banking failure, or a new global emergency, the system will not panic. The system will use it. And the world will learn the final truth. Collapses were never accidents. Collapses were always upgrades.